The twin suns of Carthus Prime burned overhead, casting long red shadows over the alien marketplace. The air was thick with dust, the smell of metal and spice mixing with the stench of sweat. Traders shouted in a dozen languages, selling weapons, food, and slaves. Captain Darius Cole walked through the crowd with a steady pace. He had come here for one thing, to buy replacement parts for his ship. The Starbound was old and stubborn, and without those parts, she wouldn't make it to the next system. He ignored the slave pens. He always did. In this part of the galaxy, slavery was as common as sand in the wind. He told himself it wasn't his problem. But today, something caught his eye. In the corner of the market, near the auction block, stood a cage made of black steel. Inside, a figure knelt on the ground, her wrists bound in heavy chains. Her fur was silver-white, glowing faintly even in the dust-filled air. Long ears, like those of a rabbit, twitched at every sound. Her eyes, a strange mix of gold and green, were locked on the ground. The auctioneer, a tall, lizard-skinned alien with a scar across his snout, called out to the crowd, "Lot 73. Dangerous, untamed, last of her kind." The crowd pushed closer. Some laughed, others whispered. Darius took a step nearer. Without meaning to, there was something wrong about the scene. This wasn't just another slave waiting to be sold. As the auctioneer spoke, the rabbit-eared girl lifted her head. For a second, her gaze locked onto Darius. Her eyes weren't full of fear. They were sharp, alive, burning with something he couldn't name. The lizard man yanked on the chain around her neck, forcing her forward. She stumbled, but didn't fall. The crowd roared with amusement. She bites, she kicks, she does not obey. The auctioneer shouted, but strong, very strong. "We'll work in. Mines or fight in pits." The auctioneer raised a whip. "Kneel, animal." Darius felt his jaw tighten. The girl didn't kneel. Instead, she turned her head slightly, eyes still on Darius, and spoke in a calm, low voice. "Don't let them take me off-world." The words hit him like a shot. She had spoken in perfect English. Before he could answer, the whip cracked across her back. She didn't cry out. She didn't even flinch. The crowd started placing bids, alien currencies, trade goods, credits. Darius's mind raced. How did she know English? Who was she? Why was she here, chained like an animal? A deep voice beside him broke his thoughts. A massive reptilian warlord, covered in black armor, was grinning. "Soft human," the warlord said. "Don't waste your credits. That one will slit your throat." "Before you sleep." Darius didn't answer. His eyes stayed on the girl. Something in him, something he thought had died years ago in the war, stirred. The auctioneer shouted for the next bid. The warlord raised it. Without thinking, Darius raised it higher. The crowd turned to look. A human outbidding a warlord was not a common sight. The warlord laughed and doubled his offer. Darius matched it instantly, then tripled it. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Even the auctioneer looked stunned. "Sold," the lizard man barked, to the human captain. The warlord leaned close as the crowd dispersed. His breath smelled of blood and smoke. "You've just bought yourself a curse, human. She will be the end of you." Darius ignored him. He stepped forward as the auctioneer unlocked the chains from the cage. The girl stood, slow and careful, her ears flicking in the heat. Her wrists were raw, the fur rubbed away by the metal cuffs. Around her neck was a thick collar of black alloy, humming faintly with energy. The auctioneer shoved the chain into Darius's hand. The weight of it felt wrong. For a moment, they stood face to face. Her gaze didn't soften. If anything, it grew sharper. "You don't know what you've done," she said quietly. Darius wanted to ask her what she meant, but the marketplace around them was shifting. People were watching. Some looked curious, others angry. Somewhere in the distance, he thought he saw a shadow moving across the rooftops, watching them. He turned and started walking toward the docking bay, the chain loose in his hand. She followed without being told, but he could feel the tension in her every step. As they left the market behind, Darius realized something. Darius kept walking, his boots hitting the metal path of the docking bay. The chain in his hand felt heavier than it should. Every step echoed in his head like a question he couldn't answer. The alien rabbit girl followed him in silence, her golden-green eyes moving constantly, scanning every shadow. Her ears twitched at every sound, a clank of metal, a hiss of steam, a shout from a vendor. She wasn't nervous. She was alert, like a soldier in enemy territory. When they reached Dock 47, Darius stopped in front of the Starbound. She was an old freighter, patched together from years of repairs. Not the kind of ship you'd bring a dangerous fugitive onto. Before he could speak, the girl said, "You should leave me here." Darius frowned. "I just paid a fortune for you." "Why?" "Would I leave you?" "Because they will follow," she replied. "And when they find us, they won't care about you. They'll burn your ship and everyone on it." Her voice was calm, but her words had weight. "Who will follow?" he asked. She didn't answer. She just looked toward the marketplace. Darius followed her gaze and saw him. The reptilian warlord from the auction stood in the crowd, watching them. Behind him, two more heavily armed aliens were speaking into Kung devices. Darius's jaw tightened. "Get inside," he said, motioning to the ship's ramp. She hesitated for a second, then obeyed. He followed her up, hitting the ramp controls. The heavy doors closed with a thud. Inside, the Starbound's main deck was dim, lit only by flickering strips along the ceiling. His engineer, Mira, appeared from behind an open panel. She froze when she saw the girl. "What is that?" Myra demanded. "A person," Darius said, "and she needs help." "Help?" Myra's eyes dropped to the collar around the girl's neck. The faint hum was louder now in the quiet of the ship. Her expression hardened. "That's Syndicate tech." Darius's stomach turned. "You're sure?" "I've seen it before," Myra said. "It's not just a tracker. That's an explosive restraint. If someone triggers it remotely, her head will—" "Enough," the girl cut in sharply. Mira's eyes widened, but she said nothing more. Darius stepped closer. "What's your name?" "Lyra," she said. "Lyra Vesh." "All right, Lyra. Tell me why they're after you." Her ears twitched again. "I led the Velari resistance. We fought the Syndicate when they tried to take our worlds. They destroyed our fleets, burned our cities. I was captured, meant to be executed, but someone sold me instead. I think the Syndicate wants me dead before I can return to my people." Myra shook her head. "If that's true, they're not going to stop." And this caller, suddenly, a loud beep cut through the room. The caller's lights turned from faint blue to a pulsing red. Lyra's eyes narrowed. "They've activated the failsafe." Myra's voice rose. "Darius, that thing will blow in less than 5 minutes." He looked between them. "Can you remove it?" "I can try," Myra said, already running for her tools. "But this isn't a normal bomb. It's designed to kill the wearer and anyone within 2 meters. Lyra didn't flinch. "If you can't remove it, throw me out the airlock." Darius stared at her. "Not happening." He grabbed the ship's comm. "Mira, you work. Lyra, you sit." But Lyra didn't sit. She stood in the corner, eyes fixed on the door, as if expecting armed soldiers to burst in any second. The beeping grew faster. Mira worked quickly, her hands moving over the collar's seams, scanning for triggers. Sweat dripped from her brow. "This thing has an anti-tamper field." If I trip it, it'll blow. Then don't trip it, Darius said. Mira shot him a look. That's helpful. The beeping became constant, a shrill warning in the cabin. Now or never, Myra shouted. She twisted a tool into the collar's lock, sparks flying. With a metallic snap, the device fell to the floor. They all froze, waiting for an explosion. It didn't come. The collar lay still. Lyra took a slow breath and touched her neck where the metal had been. Darius stepped forward. You're safe now. Lyra met his eyes. No one is safe. Not when the Syndicate is hunting. Before he could reply, the ship's alarm blared. 3 Syndicate cruisers had just entered the system. Asterisk. The red alarm lights flashed across the starbound's bridge, turning every shadow into a warning. Myra's voice was sharp. 3 Syndicate cruisers, closing fast. They must have tracked her signal before we got the collar off. Lyra stepped forward, her long ears twitching as she studied the display. They won't bother talking. They'll board, kill you both, and take me back in chains. Darius moved into the pilot's seat, his fingers flying over the controls. Not if we get out of here first. The cum crackled, and a cold metallic voice filled the cabin. Human vessel starbound, you are harboring a wanted fugitive. Surrender her immediately, and you will be allowed to leave alive. Darius didn't answer. He was already powering the engines. They're locking weapons. Mira shouted from the sensor. CONSOL, a bright flash lit up the viewport as a Syndicate plasma bolt screamed past them, missing by meters. Hold on, Darius yelled, slamming the throttle forward. The starbound lurched as its old engines roared to life, lifting off the docking. Bay floor. The ship's hull rattled. She was never built for combat runs. Behind them, the cruisers turned to pursue. Sleek, black, and armed with enough firepower to shatter a city. They cut through the sky like predators chasing prey. Lyra braced herself against the wall, her eyes locked on the viewport. You can't outrun them in this ship. They'll be on. US in less than a minute. Then we make them work for it, Darius said. The starbound weaved between tall docking towers, forcing the cruisers to slow down to avoid crashing. The city below blurred past, streets full of merchants diving for cover, market stalls collapsing in the wind from the passing ships. Another plasma shot hit close, the shockwave shaking the freighter. Warning lights lit up the console. Shields are down to 40%. Mira called out. Darius gritted his teeth. Lyra, you said you were a commander. Got any tricks for losing Syndicate ships? Her ears flicked back. Only if you trust me. He didn't hesitate. Do it. Lyra slid into the co-pilot's seat, her fingers moving over the navigation panel like she'd done it 100 times. There's a maintenance tunnel under the city. Too small for a cruiser, but big enough for us. Darius followed her directions, diving lower until the starbound skimmed just above the rooftops. The cruisers fired again. This time, one blast grazed their left wing. The ship groaned, metal screeching. We're leaking fuel. Mira shouted. Just a little further, Lyra said, pointing. Ahead, a narrow, black gap opened between 2 towers, the tunnel entrance. Darius didn't slow. He tilted the starbound sideways and shot into the darkness. The walls of the tunnel were so close that sparks flew every time a wing scraped metal. The cruisers didn't follow. Too big, but the cum buzzed again. Human vessel, you can't hide. We'll find you. Lyra smirked. Faintly, not if we're gone before they scan the exits. The tunnel spat them out into the industrial sector on the far side of the city. Smoke and steam billowed from giant vents, hiding them from the Syndicate's scanners. Course to orbit? Darius asked. Lyra shook her head. No, they'll expect. That. We need to get off-world, but first we have to disable their tracking grid. You're assuming we survive long enough to try. Mira muttered As if to prove her point, the sensors beeped. Smaller ships. Syndicate interceptors were now sweeping the city. Those are fast, Lyra said. We can't outrun them in a straight line. Darius glanced at her. Then give me something else. She looked out at the smoke-choked sky, her sharp eyes scanning the industrial maze. Then she pointed toward a set of towering fuel silos. There. If we ignite one, the shockwave will scatter their formation. It's our chance to break atmosphere. Myra turned in her seat. That will also scatter us if we're too close. Lyra's voice was firm. Then we make sure we're not too close. Darius didn't like it, but every instinct told him she was. Right. They flew low, weaving between the giant silos until they reached one leaking gas in a shimmering cloud. Lyra locked the targeting sensors. On my mark, she said. 3, 2, 1. Darius fired. The explosion was blinding. A white-blue flash that lit the entire sector. The shockwave ripped through the air, tossing the Syndicate interceptors in every direction. Now, Lyra shouted. The starbound shot upward, engines screaming, pushing through the atmosphere as Syndicate ships scrambled to recover Dot as the sky darkened and stars appeared. Darius risked a glance at Lyra. She wasn't smiling. She was watching the scanners with the eyes of someone who knew the fight wasn't over. They'll follow, she said quietly. They always do. The starbound broke through the atmosphere, its hull still trembling from the fuel silo explosion. Stars stretched across the black void, but there was no peace in the cockpit. The sensors beeped steadily. Syndicate cruisers were still behind them, far enough to be out of firing range, but close enough to shadow their every move. Mira leaned over the console, checking readouts. Engines are hot, shields are holding, but we can't outrun them forever. Lyra sat in the co-pilot's seat, her gaze fixed on the scanner display. They won't give up. I told you, they want me dead before I reach my people. Darius glanced at her. Why? You said you were a commander, but you're more than that, aren't you? Lyra didn't look away from the screen. I carry the Resistance's codes, fleet movements, safe world locations, names of leaders still in hiding. If the Syndicate gets me, they'll break us for good. Myra's eyes widened. You're a walking war file. Lyra turned to her. And that's why you need to understand. As long as I'm alive, they will never stop. Darius leaned back, thinking. The collar that Mira had removed earlier still lay on the deck, dark and lifeless. He picked it up, turning it in his hands. The smooth black alloy felt heavier than metal should. What are you doing? Mira asked. This thing nearly blew your head off, Darius said to Lyra. We need to know how it works, because they might send another. Myra frowned. That's Syndicate kill tech. It's not something I can just take apart with a wrench. Try, Darius sighed. Reluctantly, Mira carried the collar to her engineering bench. She set it down carefully, as if it might still explode. Pulling out her tools, she began scanning it with a handheld analyzer. The ship hummed quietly, the sound broken only by the soft beeps of Myra's device. She muttered. The explosive core's inert now, but there's a secondary component. Looks like it was transmitting. Lyra's ears flicked back sharply. A signal beacon. Myra nodded grimly. The moment it was put on you, it was broadcasting your location to every Syndicate ship in range. Darius cursed under his breath. So even without the bomb, they could track you anywhere. Lyra's jaw tightened. Which means they know exactly where we're heading now. Before anyone could answer, the cockpit alarms flared again. A shrill, urgent tone. Myra's eyes darted to the sensors. We've got incoming. 2 interceptors, straight ahead. Looks like they guessed our escape route. Darius gripped the controls. Can we outfly them? Lyra shook her head. Not for long. These ships are fast and heavily armed. But She paused, her eyes narrowing at the star map. There's a debris field nearby, an old battlefield from the First Galactic War, the Syndicate. Ships won't risk flying through it at high speed. Myra snorted. And we will? Lyra met her eyes. If we want to live. Darius didn't hesitate. Point the way. The starbound dove toward the glittering cloud of broken metal ahead. Twisted hulks of warships floated in the void, some the size of cities, others no bigger than shuttles. The remains of battles long over, but still deadly. The interceptors followed, firing short bursts to force them off course. Hold steady, Lyra said, gripping the console. Thread between the wrecks. Keep close to the big ones. Their hulls will block the enemy's targeting systems. Darius guided the ship between the towering remains of a cruiser's engine block. Plasma fire streaked past, slamming into the wreckage instead of their hull. One interceptor got too close and clipped a spinning hunk of metal. It spiraled out of control, vanishing into the debris. One down, Myra said. The second interceptor was more cautious, staying at a distance, waiting for them to make a mistake. Lyra's eyes narrowed. Bring us around that destroyer hull. There's a narrow passage, too tight for them to follow at full speed. Darius obeyed, angling the starbound. Into the gap. The interceptor tried to match them, but the pilot was too slow. The enemy ship scraped the wreckage, sparks flaring as one wing was torn off. That's two, Darius said, allowing himself a small smile. But Lyra wasn't smiling. She was staring at the scanner, her voice low. We're clear for now. But the cruisers are still behind us, and they'll call for more. Myra sighed. So we run until we can't run anymore. Lyra shook her head slowly. No, we stop running. We fight. Darius turned to her. In this ship? Against them? Lyra's golden-green eyes burned with a quiet, dangerous fire. You freed me, Captain. Now I'll show you why the Syndicate fears the last of the Valari. The starbound drifted out of the debris field, her hull scratched and dented. The vast emptiness of space stretched before them, but Darius knew it was only an illusion of safety. The ship's proximity. Alarm cut through the silence. Myra glanced at the scanner and swore under her breath. 3 cruisers, directly ahead. They must have predicted our exit point. Darius tightened his grip on the controls. We can't go back through the debris field. Too much damage to the hull. Lyra leaned forward, her golden-green eyes narrowing. They're forcing us into open space. Out here, we're easy prey. A moment later, the comm system crackled to life. The voice that came through was cold, controlled, and unmistakably Syndicate. Human captain of the vessel starbound, you are harboring a fugitive enemy of the Syndicate. Hand her over now, and you will be allowed to leave unharmed. Refuse, and you will be destroyed. Darius didn't respond right away. His gaze shifted to Lyra. She was sitting still, but her ears twitched slightly, betraying her tension. They're lying, Lyra said flatly. They will kill you, whether you hand me. Over or not. That's how the Syndicate works. Myra shot her a look. And if they're not lying? This ship can't take a cruiser broadside. We'd be vapor before the shields fail. Darius stayed quiet for a long moment, listening to the low hum of the engines. He knew Myra was right about the odds, but something in him refused to accept them. The comm crackled again. You have 30 seconds to decide. He keyed the mic. This is Captain Darius Cole of the Starbound. You want her? Come and take her. Lyra's eyes widened, but there was no fear in them, only a sharp, approving gleam. So be it, the Syndicate. Voice replied, and the channel went dead. The cruisers began to move, spreading out into an attack formation. Their black hulls seemed to drink in the starlight. They'll hit us with ion cannons first, Lyra said. It'll disable our systems before they board. Suggestions? Darius asked, already flipping switches to divert more power to the engines. We can't fight them head-on, Lyra said. But if we split them up, we have a chance. Mira frowned. Split? Up how? Lyra pointed at the star map. There's an asteroid belt to the west. If we can get inside before they close in, their cruisers will have to break formation. It's our best shot at evening the fight. That's a lot of ifs, Myra muttered. Darius didn't hesitate. Set course for the belt. The starbound shot forward, engines groaning under the sudden acceleration. The cruisers responded instantly, their massive bulk surprisingly fast. Plasma bolts lit up the darkness, streaking past the freighter as Darius weaved the ship in sharp, unpredictable patterns. Shields down to 60%, Myra called out. Hold it together, Darius said through clenched teeth. They neared the asteroid belt, a swirling mass of rock and ice, chunks the size of buildings. The cruisers followed, but just as Lyra predicted, they began to separate, each taking a different angle of approach. Now we choose one and hit it hard, Lyra said. With what? Mira demanded. We've got one forward cannon and half a torpedo rack. Lyra's ears twitched. Sometimes you don't need more guns. You just need to hit where it hurts. She leaned over the targeting console and began locking coordinates. Darius trusted her without asking questions. The nearest cruiser fired another. Plasma shot, this one grazing the starbound's port side. The ship jolted, alarms flaring. Hull breach in Cargo Bay 3. Mira shouted. Seal it off, Darius ordered. Lyra looked at the cruiser's trajectory. Bring us around hard. Darius swung the starbound in a sharp turn. The move brought them dangerously close to an asteroid, but also lined them up directly under the cruiser's belly. Now, Lyra shouted. Myra fired the remaining torpedoes. 2 streaks of fire shot across the darkness, striking the cruiser's undercarriage. The explosion lit up the asteroid field, tearing through the enemy's lower decks. Direct hit. Myra cheered. The cruiser veered off, venting fire and debris, but the other 2 cruisers were closing fast. Lyra's voice was calm but urgent. We can't stay here. We need to lure them somewhere they can't call reinforcements. Darius gave a sharp nod. Then we take the fight where we choose. The starbound darted deeper into the asteroid belt, weaving between tumbling rocks. Behind them, the 2 Syndicate cruisers followed, but their size made them slower, less agile. Lyra glanced at Darius, her expression unreadable. You've already made your choice, Captain. You're in this war now. Darius kept his eyes on the path ahead. Then let's make sure we win the first battle. The starbound darted deeper into the asteroid belt, the ship weaving through massive chunks of rock drifting in slow, deadly patterns. Each boulder was large enough to crush the freighter to dust if they miscalculated even by a few meters. Behind them, the 2 Syndicate cruisers followed, their black hulls gleaming in the faint light from distant stars. They were slower now, forced to maneuver carefully, but their weapons were still locked on. Mira sat hunched over the sensor display. They're holding position just far enough back to keep firing lanes open. We can't shake them forever. Lyra leaned forward, studying the asteroid layout on the nav map. We don't have to. We just need them in the right spot. Darius glanced at her. I'm guessing this right spot ends with them blowing up? Lyra's golden-green eyes flicked. Toward him. Something like that. They zigzagged through the belt until they reached an area where the asteroids were clustered thickly, connected by drifting clouds of metallic dust. Lyra pointed at the largest rock in the region, a jagged, irregular mass easily 5 times the size of the starbound. That one. It's full of old mining explosives. The Syndicate scanned it years ago and marked it too unstable to approach. Mira's eyebrows shot up. So you want us to fly right up to it? That's insane. No, Lyra said calmly. I want them to fly right up to it." The plan Lyra explained quickly. They would hide the starbound behind the giant asteroid's shadow, using its dense metal to mask their signal. When the Syndicate cruisers closed in to search, Darius would maneuver the ship so Myra could fire a precise shot at the unstable core, triggering a chain reaction big enough to cripple both cruisers. "If we're too close when it blows," Myra warned, "we'll be space dust too." Lyra's ears twitched. "That's why you're going to be very, very good at your job." The lure Darius slowed the starbound just enough to let the Syndicate cruisers think they were catching up. Then he veered sharply around the giant asteroid, vanishing into its shadow. "Cut main power," Lyra instructed. "No engines, no emissions. Let them think we're limping." The ship went dark, except for the dim emergency lights. The only sound was the faint creak of the hull cooling. On the scanner, the cruiser's blips grew closer. They were scanning the area now, sweeping their sensors across the belt. "The strike positions," Lyra whispered. Though her voice was steady, the cruisers edged closer, their massive shapes blotting out the starlight. Asterisk. Steady. Steady. Lyra's gaze never left the scanner. Now, Darius fired the engines, bringing the starbound out from behind the asteroid in a sudden burst of motion. Mira immediately locked the targeting system onto a weak point in the asteroid's crust, an old mining shaft still packed with unstable charges. One precise plasma shot struck home. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the asteroid's core flared bright white. "Punch it." Lyra shouted. Darius slammed the throttle forward, sending the starbound shooting away from the blast. Behind them, the asteroid erupted, shards of molten rock spraying through space. First Syndicate cruiser took the full brunt of the explosion. Its shields collapsed instantly, and its hull cracked apart, venting fire and debris. The second cruiser was thrown off course, spinning wildly as its systems overloaded. The aftermath Mira whooped. One down, one crippled. Lyra didn't celebrate. She was already studying the scanner. The crippled one will send a distress call. More will come. Darius adjusted their heading. Then we disappear before they arrive. Lyra leaned back in her seat, her voice quieter now. "You've done more than just save my life, Captain. You've struck a blow the Syndicate will remember." Darius glanced at her. "And that means they'll double their efforts to find us." Lyra's eyes met his, steady and unwavering. "Then we make sure we're ready when they do." A new target Mira turned from the console. "Where exactly are we going now?" "Because if the Syndicate's going to chase us across the galaxy, I'd like to know which direction we're running." Lyra's ears twitched once before she spoke. "Not running. Heading for a Valari outpost. There are survivors there, and ships. If we unite them, we can hit back harder." Darius nodded slowly, then set the course. "Let's see if the last of the Valari still know how to fight." The starbound turned away from the wreckage and slipped into the shadows of the asteroid belt, engines humming quietly. Behind them, the crippled cruiser drifted, its comm signal screaming for help into the dark. The starbound slipped out of the asteroid belt and into the cold, open stretch of space. Stars glimmered around them like distant, watchful eyes. For the first time in hours, there were no alarms, no weapons fire, no enemy ships on the scanner. But no one on board relaxed. Lyra sat in the co-pilot's seat, her eyes fixed on the star map. Her voice was quiet but steady. "The outpost is on the edge of the Valari expanse. It's hidden inside the rings of a gas giant called Arian 4. If the Syndicate hasn't found it yet, we still have time." Mira frowned. "And if they have found it?" Lyra didn't look away from the map. "Then there's no outpost left to find." The arrival hours passed before the gas giant came into view, a massive sphere of swirling gold and deep red clouds its rings stretching across the blackness like a shining halo. The outpost's coordinates led them into the densest part of the ring system. Navigating the rings was dangerous. Huge ice boulders and chunks of rock spun silently, each capable of tearing through the starbound's hull. Lyra guided Darius through the path, her ears twitching at every course adjustment. Finally, the scanners picked up a faint energy reading. A cluster of structures came into view, half hidden in the shadow of a massive rock formation. "That's it," Lyra said, leaning forward. "The Haven." The reunion. The docking bay doors slid open slowly, revealing a wide hangar lit by pale blue lights. As the starbound landed, figures began to gather. Velari survivors, tall, slender, with fur in shades of silver, white, and pale gold. Many wore simple clothing, but some still had pieces of old armor strapped to their bodies. When Lyra stepped off the ramp, silence fell. Then a single voice cried out, "Commander Vesh." The crowd surged forward. Some saluted sharply, others simply stared in disbelief. One older Velari stepped forward, her fur streaked with gray. "We thought you were dead," the elder said. "So did the Syndicate," Lyra replied. "They were wrong." The briefing inside the outpost's command room. A holographic map of the surrounding systems flickered in the air. Red markers showed Syndicate patrol routes. Blue markers, far fewer, marked Velari safe havens. "We've been holding out," the elder explained. "But we're scattered. Supplies are low. The Syndicate has tightened their grip on every nearby system." Lyra glanced at Darius, then back to the others. "We can't keep hiding. We need to unite the survivors, strike their weak points, and show the galaxy the Velari are not finished." The room buzzed with uncertainty. Some nodded. Others looked doubtful. Darius spoke up. "She's right. I've seen the Syndicate's fear firsthand. They're powerful, but they're not invincible. If we hit them hard enough, we can make them bleed." The warning Mira entered, holding a datapad, her face pale. "We've got a problem. A big one." She placed the pad on the table, projecting an image. A massive Syndicate fleet, dozens of cruisers and battleships, all heading for Eridan 4. "They must have tracked us here," Mira said. "They'll be in the system in less than a day." Gasps filled the room. The elder turned to Lyra. "If we stay, they'll destroy us. If we run, we lose the last stronghold we have." Lyra's golden green eyes burned. "Then we don't run." The choice outside the command room. Darius stood beside Lyra, looking out at the hangar where Velari engineers worked to ready old fighter craft for battle. "You know," Darius said quietly, "we could leave. The starbound could slip away before they get here." Lyra looked at him, her expression unreadable. "You could, but you won't." Darius didn't answer. He didn't have to. The cliffhanger. The outpost's alarm sirens wailed, echoing through the corridors. A young Velari soldier ran in, out of breath. "They're here." The Syndicate fleet just jumped into the outer ring. In the distance, through the hangar's force field, the black shapes of Syndicate warships began to emerge from hyperspace, filling the darkness like a swarm of predators. Lyra stepped forward, her ears twitching, her voice steady. "Then let's show them what happens when you try to break the last of the Velari." Darius stood beside her, gripping the strap of his blaster rifle. The camera of the scene would pull back, the outpost dwarfed by the endless incoming fleet. As the battle for Arian 4 was about to begin, this wraps the story with a big emotional payoff for Lyra's return, and a massive suspense hook for the next chapter, so your audience can't wait for part 2 or a sequel.